Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a good lunch and ready to start the sessions with us. And in this afternoon, there are two panel discussions and a documentary film at the end. So the first up, the panel discussion on Indigenous people rights and the conflicts over forest conservation in Southeast Asia. That is co-organized by Bang Kloi Coalition, Thailand, Center for Ethnic Study and Development, Chiang Mai University. So this panel will be moderated by Pornpen Kongkachornkiat, from the Cross-Cultural Foundations. May I invite Pornpen on the screen, please?
สวัสดีค่ะ Thank you very much สวัสดีค่ะ
คุณ Pornpen, before may I introduce you to all the audience? So Pornpen is the director of the Cross-Cultural Foundation and organizations working on justice and human rights monitoring in Thailand. So Pornpen, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, I thank you very much and honored to be a part of this very important forum for Southeast Asia and in particular for indigenous people in our regions, which many times we have been, let's say, left behind or later be informed about what is going on about all these developments and the progress of the nations. So today we have a very interesting panelist representing Southeast Asia, but so sorry that we do not have many countries. I mean, we have 10 countries in our ASEAN, and also we also have different tribes with different groups of indigenous people. But today we will have a presentation of our indigenous people friends and those who work with indigenous people in Malaysia, Cambodia, and of course in Thailand. We have 4 panelists, and I think I would like each of you to introduce yourself a little bit before we start the presentation. So we will actually have a conversation among us, but with a lot of audience who are listening to us. Let's Pachara Khamchamnan, can you introduce yourself a little bit, and what is Bang Kloi Coalition?
Hi everyone, my name is Pachara Khamchamnan, and I work as a coordinator of Bang Kloi Coalition. And actually I work in the northern Thailand with indigenous people called Karen that have a conflict about their land rights in the forest. And we set up the coalition because the Karen in Bang Kloi have a conflict with the national park officers since the beginning of the year. And okay, let's fight.
Okay, thank you very much. So we heard a lot about the movement, and also a very important driven by the youth, including the youth from the urban area and also the youth from indigenous people groups. Our association professor Dumrongphol Inchan, we met many years ago when we were so young anyway. Can you update about your work in relation to indigenous people?
Yes, thank you, Kun Pornpen. I am department for the Silpakorn University, Bangkok. I have done the research on the Western current in the contemporary period, and also we have want to encourage the indigenous people in the mainland of Southeast Asia for maintain their identity, especially for like the forest guardians and others, natural guardian like that.
Okay, we will hear the update of your work today. Samban, Tugang, you are from East Malaysia and under the organization named Save the River. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your organization?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Samban Tugang. So I'm working with Safe Rivers for about 3 years now. So actually Safe Rivers now, we are working in advocacy in our community. Our community focus is in Ulu Baram, which is upper part of Baram. So we conduct for now, I mean, various activity in advocacy to help the community to stand for their land rights. So I think that's all from me.
What tribal group is there in that area?
They're collectively known as Orang Ulu, ethnic group from Kayan, Kenya, and so on. Yeah.
Okay, so we will hear about your presentation in detail. And Dumriap Sua, our friend from Cambodia, Sochea. Sochea Pheap, can you introduce yourself and your organization, please?
Dumriap Sua.
Dumriap Sua.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sochea Pheap. I actually belong to Punong peoples. My people is basically living in the northern part of Cambodia, but also border with Vietnam. Some parts they are still in Vietnam, in some central part of Vietnam.
Okay.
So I am a founder of Cambodia Indigenous Youth Associations, and currently I also work with the Cambodia Indigenous People Organizations. Basically, our work is to support the indigenous community for access to land rights and also have access to natural resource where they depend heavily for their livelihood and their food security as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will start with the presentation from Pachara Khamchamnan, the representative of the Safe Bang Kloi, and he will tell us more about the situation in Bang Kloi, Kongkachornkiat. Are you ready? And you have your PowerPoint? Can you share?
But I would like to speak in Thai.
15 minutes 15 นาทีนะคะ And we will have a second round for you.
ครับสวัสดีทุกคนนะครับก็จากภาคีเซฟบางกลอยนะครับผมจริงๆแล้วเรื่องบางกลอยค่อนข้างจะเป็น Talk of the Town นะครับเกี่ยวกับเรื่องการละเมิดสิทธิของกลุ่มชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองหมายถึงว่าทั่วโลกเลยก็ได้ยินขบวนการเคลื่อนไหวของกลุ่มภาคีเซฟบางกลอยซึ่งจริงๆก็เป็นกลุ่มคนรุ่นใหม่ในเมืองนี่แหละครับที่ออกมาต่อสู้เรียกร้องสิทธิ์เพื่อกลุ่มชนเผ่าพื้นเมืองชุมชนเล็กๆชุมชนหนึ่งที่อยู่ลึกเข้าไปในพื้นที่อุทยานแห่งชาติซึ่งตอนนี้ก็ได้รับการขึ้นทะเบียนเป็นมรดกโลกไปแล้วเรียบร้อยนะครับเมื่อเดือนมิถุนายนที่ผ่านมานะครับจริงๆอยากจะให้มองเรื่อง
area of conservation area, but I think Bangkok is a reflection of the failed forest conservation concept in Thailand. It is the reflection, especially during the authoritarian or dictatorial state. It can be worst case that can happen to indigenous communities in Thailand, and based on the information of the Princess of Sirinthorn Anthropological Center, there are about 70 indigenous group or ethnic group in Thailand, covering about more than 6 million, and the Forest Conservation Agency said that there are about 4,000 communities of the indigenous people living in the area, and this can be the issue that can happen to many group of people or many indigenous people in Thailand. Let's say the code of Noabimi. Noabimi, he is 55 years old, living in Kongkachornkiat forest, the homeland of the Bang Kloi people. He said, since he was forcibly relocated, I wanted to hang myself so many times while living here. I wasn't born here, and I was born in Chai Pandin, or the homeland of the group of his people. The Minister of Forest and Environmental Conservation Minister have said that this is nothing to do with human rights. according to the minister, it has nothing to do with human rights, but I'm going to kind of like show you how the Bang Kloi issue is closely relevant to human rights. The Bang Kloi people living in Chai Pandin, it is the homeland for the indigenous Karen people, traces back to like 1912. The mapping of the Royal Thai Army cartography department have acknowledged the Chai Pandin village after the Royal Thai Survey Department recorded existence of Ban Chai Pandin, and the area later was in 1996 to like the lower Bang Kloi or Bang Kloi Lang. The current location site, there are 67 families who have migrated without any commitment that they cannot live in the lower Bang Kloi area. They can be relocated to the upper Bang Kloi area. So there's some group of population decided to return to the upper Bang Kloi village because they cannot do the rotational farming in the relocation site. This, people suffer from starvation and food insecurities. And in 2011, the Tanausi operation, as well as the new chief of the Kongkachornkiat National Park, calling them the ethnic minority, as well as stigmatization that they are non-Thai. They have just been immigrated from Myanmar. They are related to the narcotic trade, as well as they are the group of the people who commit the crime of deforestation. This operation resulting in another forcibly relocation. The Tanausi operation forcibly like cut down the food crops that planted by the community, and this is the ceasing of the rotational plantation. You can see that there are many crops that have been cut down, as well as the touchings of the houses of the current people in the Tanausi operation in 2011. After the people have been forcibly relocated and destroyed of their property during this forced eviction, they recourse to the administrative court for this issue. And after that, two people who have decided to demand the right for the indigenous people. The first one is the Thatkapon Phu of he is one of the Thai people who kind of like was assassinated after helping the community with the litigation. The next person is Policy Rakjongchalerm, a native Karen in the area, to try to communicate the issue of the Bang Kloi community. He was suffered from forced disappearance in 2014. He was his whereabouts was found last time before he was like under the custody of the forest rangers. They were later found like his burned skeleton in oil barrels and hidden in the forest in the Kongkachorn area, which is not so far away from the last location of his whereabouts. The latest conflict that created the Safe Bang Kloi Alliance is the problem from the original conflict from the forced eviction and relocation. Some people do not have any plot of land in the new area. They have to become manual labor to the other people in the outside of the community, which is not the way the people have lived. This is the current relocation plot, and the soil have been like degraded. People cannot, like really plant or live in that area in the Kongkachorn forest. This is the result that the Bang Kloi people decided earlier this year to to go back to their ancestral domain after the forced eviction for 25 years. This is during the when they travel back to the homeland, and then the Department of National Forest decided to press a legal action against them. So finally, the people, even in the cities or in the urban, demand that indigenous people are people too, as well as the Sep Bangkoi, all people are equal. And then this is the flashback to the Phetburi watershed river. Watershed forest, 28 people have been pressed charged under the National Forest Act. They can face up to 20 years of maximum imprisonment and 400,000 baht maximum fine just for returning to their indigenous area. So this is the joint force between the armies and the military, as well as the forest ranger. These are the relatives of the 28 people who have been arrested. And this is the photo from like during the arrest. You can see that this young boy, you know, like his hand was tied at the back, and the people in black are the forest ranger trying to arrest the people. This is the process where they try to force the Kongkachornkiat indigenous people have been indigenous people leave the area in order to get the UNESCO World Heritage endorsement. We also have like this activity called cultural heritage, blood heritage, because this despite it have been the Bang Kloi area and Kongkachorn forest complex have been recognized as the World Heritage. These indigenous people have been living in the area despite they don't have any land title, because they are indigenous people. This is one of the reflection of the reflection of the policy. For example, the National Forest Act, which is enforced in the Kongkachorn area, which is the law issued under the coup d'etat under the military government during the National Council for Peace and Security, National Council for Peace and Security, or like NCPO, which is enforced this law arbitrarily against the ethnic and indigenous people. The people of Bang Kloi have suffered severe and arbitrary enforcement of the law using the negative discourse against their dignity, try to delegitimate their struggle in order to go back to their ancestral domain by charging them or blaming them first that they are alien, they are non-Thai, they are just like the Karen who have been immigrated from Myanmar, so they are not indigenous people. Second, the discourse against these people that stigmatize them as a narcotic dealer. For example, they grow like they grow the marijuana, so they will go to have like marijuana plantation in the national forest, with the National Forest Authority found that this is unacceptable to them. And then they also said that these people contribute to global warming because of their rotational plantation. This is the discourse says that we need to demystify this myth from the society, Thai society at large. However, the people in the Bang Kloi actually like have suffered because of the World Heritage and endorsement or the World Heritage enlistment, which we need to actually like revisit the law as well as the military operations against the indigenous people is not and should not be equated to the cultural or natural resources or even forest conservation. This is the use of violence in the forest area rather than the protection. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and with a very powerful image and also the movement that has been done, no, in front of everyone here in Bangkok, and also the media also have been covered quite a lot. However, the conflict is still continues, no, as you may know that Thailand is also under very strict rules in different contexts, and also the context of indigenous people and forestry management is also very strict. So next, I would ask Samban to start her presentation, and I believe that there will be interpretation from Suren. Yes, Suren also ready, and we will have okay. We will have the conversation with 2 languages. So please, you would have 15 minutes or a bit more because of translations. Yes, please.
Did someone? Do I have to share my own presentation?
Yes, please.
So I don't have your presentation with me. Otherwise,
Can you see my presentation?
Not yet.
Right here. Sorry.
Oh, sebentar ya.
Oke, hari ini saya akan membentangkan tentang orang asal dan juga beberapa hak dan konflik yang dihadapi oleh orang asal di Malaysia. So I will start with introduction with what indigenous people in Malaysia. Berdasarkan kajian pada tahun 2017, penduduk Malaysia dianggarkan berjumlah 13,8% daripada jumlah penduduk Malaysia. Penduduk asli di Malaysia dianggarkan berjumlah sekitar 13,8% daripada jumlah penduduk Malaysia. So Suresh.
Okay. So according to a research, the total population of indigenous people in Malaysia amounted to 13.8% compared to the whole population of Malaysia.
Mereka terdiri daripada orang asli semenanjung Malaysia dan penduduk asal di Sabah dan Sarawak atau dikenali sebagai anak negeri.
So this 13.8% of the population consists of the indigenous people on the West Malaysia and East Malaysia.
Di semenanjung Malaysia, orang asli terdapat 3 kumpulan utama, yaitu Negrito ataupun dikenali sebagai Semang, Senoi, dan orang asli ataupun Melayu Proto. Mereka mempunyai 18 subkumpulan orang asli.
So in the West Malaysia, there is 3 main groups called Negrito, Senoi, and Orang Asli, also known as Proto-Melayu. So the tribes, the number of tribes in of the indigenous people in West Malaysia is 18.
Penduduk negeri di Sarawak secara kolektif dikenali sebagai anak negeri ataupun orang asal. Mereka terdapat 2 grup utama, yaitu Dayak ataupun orang Ulu. Mereka termasuk Iban, Bidayuh, Kenyah, Kayan, dan sebagainya.
So in the East Malaysia, they are known as anak negeri or also as orang asal. And there are many tribes, and the main tribes are Dayak and orang Ulu.
Sementara di Sabah, 39 kumpulan etnik orang asli yang berbeza dikenali sebagai orang asli ataupun anak negeri, native of Sabah.
Okay, and in Sabah, there are 39 groups of indigenous people known as orang asli or anak negeri.
3 kumpulan utama di Sabah, yaitu Dusun, Murut, dan Paitan. Mereka secara kolektif dikenali sebagai orang asal di Malaysia.
There are 3 main indigenous groups: Dusun, Murut, Samban, I didn't get the third one.
Paitan.
Paitan, and
Yeah.
they are known as the orang asal.
Yes. Oke, majority atau dianggarkan 60% orang asal ataupun orang asli tinggal di pedalaman terutamanya di kawasan luar bandar. Komuniti-komuniti ini berjuang untuk mempertahankan cara hidup mereka sendiri berdasarkan sistem adat yang terus-menerus dipengaruhi sebagai akibat perkembangan pesat di Malaysia.
60% of the indigenous people in Malaysia lives either in the rural area or on the fringes of the urban area. And these communities are fighting to keep their way of living based on their communal system.
Majoriti masyarakat orang asal yang tinggal di kawasan hutan dan masih mengamalkan cara hidup tradisional yang sangat dipengaruhi oleh persekitaran dan amalan lama yang ditinggalkan oleh nenek moyang mereka.
Their lifestyles is influenced a lot by their ancestral land, which is basically the forest, and also cultures which was left to them by their ancestors.
Hampir semua tingkah laku dan aktiviti yang dilakukan oleh masyarakat mereka memerlukan undang-undang termasuk dalam menjalin hubungan dengan alam sekitar.
All their acts and living needs a law to bind them to have a balanced relation between them and the environment.
Secara amnya, pengetahuan masyarakat orang asli telah sebati dalam dunia semula jadi serta pengetahuan tradisional yang diturunkan dari nenek moyang mereka yang diamalkan hingga ke hari ini.
The indigenous people are very much submerged with the environment around them based on the knowledge given to them from their ancestors. And this is being applied even today to continue their lifestyle.
Sambal, your screen was not sharing the PowerPoint. It's only computer. Can you click on your PowerPoint again? It's only the screen of your computer, but not PowerPoint. Yeah. Or you can continue talking. We enjoy your presentation, but we did not see the photos.
How about this one? Okay.
Yes, just now coming.
Okay, so sumber semula jadi sangat penting dalam kehidupan masyarakat orang asli sejak dulu lagi di mana mereka bergantung kepada hutan sepenuhnya untuk memburu, membina, untuk mencari makan, membina rumah, pertanian dan mengumpulkan sumber hutan untuk kraftangan yang merupakan salah satu mata pencarian dan beberapa yang lain untuk kegunaan harian.
The nature is so valuable for the indigenous people, and from the beginning of occupying the forest, they had been relying very much to build their houses, to find food, to do small agriculture, and also to gather the product of forest to produce handcrafts, which is also a method of income for them.
Okay. Sebelum sebahagian besar penduduk asli memeluk agama Kristian ataupun Muslim atau agama yang mereka percayai sekarang, mereka adalah animisme di mana mereka akan menyembah alam sekitar mereka.
Before most of the indigenous people are converted to Christianity and Muslim, they believe in animism, which they worship the nature around them.
Orang asli percaya bahawa roh adalah penjaga hutan, oleh itu mereka harus berhati-hati dan menggunakan sumber-sumber dari hutan dengan sebaiknya untuk mengelakkan roh murka.
The indigenous people believes that their ancestors are the keepers of the environment, the forest around them, and therefore they shouldn't do anything that will offend the keeper of this forest, and that's why they are very careful in handling the resources from the forest.
Sebagai contoh, untuk makanan mereka cuma memburu dan hanya mendapatkan jumlah yang diperlukan.
So, for example, hunting, they don't hunt more than what they need. This is an example of them to take what they need, so that the keeper of the forest is not angry with the community.
Alam adalah sebahagian daripada kehidupan mereka. Bencana alam kepada mereka adalah pelbagai bentuk seperti banjir, kemarau, penyakit ataupun kematian.
Nature is a part of them, and the environmental disaster comes to them in many forms, such as flood, drought, disease, and also death.
Okey, saya ambil contoh kejadian yang berlaku baru-baru ini di Sarawak, di mana kejadian longgokkan kayu hanyut yang berlaku di Baleh, Sarawak. Sebilangan masyarakat Iban percaya bahawa itu adalah roh yang murka kerana eksploitasi sumber alam yang berlebihan.
For example, the current incident in Baleh, Sarawak, where floating logs accumulated in one of the river. The indigenous people believes this happened because the keepers are angry when the forest had been exploited too much.
Okay, I will move to challenges and conflict facing by orang asal in Malaysia. Yes, walaupun di Malaysia orang asal juga terjaga, hak-hak orang asal juga terjaga, namun terdapat pelbagai macam mana kita nak cakap flaws dalam pendekatan undang-undang yang telah ditetapkan oleh undang-undang dalam Malaysia. So sekiranya tidak ada kekurangan dalam undang-undang, so saya tidak wujud dan anda, saya rasa rakan-rakan lain juga tidak wujud. So kami wujud sebab kekurangan praktis undang-undang terhadap hak-hak indigenous people.
Samban will focus on challenges and conflict faced by the indigenous people. According to her, even though there are some sectors of the law which takes care the indigenous people, but then it is lacking in many aspects. And if the law is perfect, then she won't be here today, and even the forum won't be here, because it can take care the indigenous people. But since the law is not perfect, the flow is not perfect according to her. So that's why we are here today to discuss this.
Okay, ini berikut adalah beberapa gambaran yang berlaku di Malaysia, di mana iaitu pembelakan yang berlebihan, land grabbing dan juga massive palm oil plantation.
Okay, the pictures in the slide shows some of the overexploitation happening in Malaysia, land grabbing, excessive logging, and also excessive clearing of forests for oil palm plantation.
Okay, sebenarnya ada banyak lagi konflik-konflik yang dialami oleh orang asal di Malaysia. Some of it saya akan bincang selepas ini. Dan yang ini antara yang popular di Malaysia lah.
There are many other conflicts that the indigenous people are facing, but these three is the main. Other conflicts, Samban will discuss through her presentation later.
Okay. Walaupun mempunyai peruntukan dalam Perlembagaan Persekutuan dan dalam undang-undang domestik dan antarabangsa yang mengiktiraf hak tanah mereka, isu-isu sistematik telah menolak orang asal dan orang asli menikmati sepenuhnya hak undang-undang dan hak asasi manusia.
even though there is enough amount of equal allocation in the federal constitution and the international law and also the domestic laws, but the indigenous people has been step-sided in having the full benefits of the law and their human rights.
Malaysia juga telah menyokong dan penerimaan deklarasi PBB mengenai hak-hak orang asli UN RIP pada tahun 2007.
This happens even though Malaysia is a signatory of the UN RIP, United Nations Declaration for the Indigenous People in the year 2007.
Pembangunan tanah menggantikan sebilangan besar hutan hujan yang kaya dengan spesies dan dengan ladang kelapa sawit, getah dan pokok, sejumlah empangan telah dibangunkan atau sedang dirancang untuk memenuhi permintaan tenaga pengairan dan tujuan lain.
The exploitation of the forest comes in the form of plantations of palm oil, rubber tree, and also other kind of trees. Hydroelectric dams are being built to fulfill the energy demand for irrigation and also for some other purposes.
Eksploitasi sumber seperti pelombongan dan pembalakan menyebabkan kehilangan sumber tanah dan hutan dan kemerosakan persekitaran yang tidak dapat dipulihkan.
The exploitation of mining and logging are irreversible to the environment.
Dalam proses semua ini, semua projek-projek tidak ada prinsip izin berasaskan maklum awal bebas dan tulus, dan juga tidak ada ketulusan mengenai report EIA, SIA dan kajian-kajian lain.
There is a lack of transparency in the reports of EIA and also other reports because there is no free prior informed consent applied among the indigenous people by the state.
Okay. I'll move to this one. The first issue yang dialami oleh orang asal dan orang asli sama ada di Semenanjung Malaysia ataupun Sabah dan Sarawak.
Okay, she will move to the first issue being faced by the indigenous people in Sabah, Sarawak, and also in the West Malaysia.
Okay, yang pertama adalah customary land rights, di mana kurangnya pelindungan dan penghormatan terhadap hak kolektif masyarakat adat atas tanah, wilayah dan sumber mereka. Kedua adalah penolakan oleh kerajaan untuk menerima perspektif pribumi terhadap tanah adat ataupun NCR yang ditegaskan oleh keputusan Mahkamah Persekutuan.
Okay, the first one is the lack of recognition and respect to the collective ownership of the indigenous people's ancestral land, the area, and also the resources from the land. So number two is the denial from the government to consider the perspective of the indigenous people towards NCR, native customary rights, as was decided in some of the federal courts judgments.
Okay. Mahkamah Malaysia dalam beberapa keputusan mengakui kolektif orang asal terhadap wilayah dan sumber tanah, namun pemerintah negeri terus menolak dan mengakui keputusan tersebut sebagai presiden undang-undang.
Even though the courts in Malaysia have decided in the rights of indigenous people towards their land and the resources in their land, but the state has continuously denied to recognize the decision and consider the judgment from the court as a precedent only as a precedent of law.
Dalam upaya melindungi hak atas tanah, wilayah dan sumber daya tradisional, banyak orang asal mengalami intimidasi dan gangguan oleh pihak berkuasa dan anggota penguasa.
Therefore, the indigenous people are facing a lot of threats and disturbed by the authorities and those in the power.
Saya ambil contoh di mana yang sering berlaku di Sarawak khususnya, di mana tuan tanah di mana mereka cuba untuk mempertahankan tanah mereka pula yang ditangkap dan dipenjarakan oleh pihak penguasa. Jadi ini disebabkan oleh kurangnya perlindungan ataupun tidak jelas hak atas tanah dan adat mereka. Pihak authority ataupun pihak authority tadi telah mengambil tindakan terhadap tuan yang punya tanah.
When a leader of a community called Tuai Rumah tries to defend the community, but in doing so, the leader gets arrested, and therefore it's a threat to the community.
Saya juga ingin memberi contoh keputusan Mahkamah Persekutuan terhadap kes Tuai Rumah Sandah, di mana mereka telah menyatakan undang-undang yang tertulis di Sarawak tidak memberikan kekuatan hukum kepada kategori tanah yang luas ataupun yang menggabungkan wilayah tradisional ataupun pemakai menua dan hutan komunal mereka.
There is an example of this Tuai Rumah Sanda case in the federal court. So the federal court decided that the written law in Sarawak doesn't give an authority for the land to be considered as a communal land or the indigenous people to claim the rights from the land.
Okay, pada tahun 2018, pemerintah telah mengubah undang-undang sekali lagi untuk sepenuhnya mempertimbangkan hak pemakai menua ataupun pulau galau. Namun bila di petunjuk yang jelas bahawa hak adat penduduk asli masih belum diakui sepenuhnya.
In 2008, the state tried to change the law again to give more power for them to deny the rights to the ancestral land.
Samban, you have 2 more minutes, no?
Okay. Ini pula adalah kesan daripada tanah hak adat diserahkan kepada corporation untuk pembalakan, sama ada pembalakan untuk tanaman kelapa sawit dan sebagainya.
This happens because the state wants to give the land to the corporations for the palm oil plantation.
Okay. Seterusnya indigenous di mana tanah dan adat telah digazetkan sebagai forest reserve dan juga wildlife sanctuary dan national park. Kejadian ini menyebabkan orang asal di Malaysia secara perlahan tidak macam mana kita nak cakap, secara perlahan tanah mereka hilang dan state government akan claim itu sebagai tanah negeri.
When a forest is gazetted as a forest reserve, a totally protected area, a wildlife sanctuary, or as a national park, the indigenous people loses their right on the land because the state claims the land in the pretext that they want to protect the land.
Okay, yang saya rasa ini yang terakhir, dialah violation of the rights development, free, prior and informed consent, di mana banyak kejadian yang berlaku, yang kes-kes yang sebelumnya saya boleh kaitkan, di mana pembalakan, penanaman kelapa sawit dan sebagainya, tanah orang-orang asli ataupun orang asal tidak diberitahu tentang projek-projek tersebut.
This will be Samban's last point. She believes that the FPIC, the free, prior, informed consent, is very important for the indigenous people to know and to decide on their ancestral land. And this is not happening at the moment.
Ya, saya ambil contoh seperti yang berlaku di kawasan komuniti saya sendiri, di mana sekarang ini komuniti di Baram sedang mempertahankan tanah mereka daripada company besar untuk mengambil kayu di tanah mereka, di mana penduduk-penduduk ini tidak tahu tentang pengambilan kayu di tanah mereka.
The example is from her own community in Baram, where there is a lot of logging companies coming in to take out the trees, but none of the indigenous people knows about it because lack of the free, prior, informed consent.
Okay, sebagai kesimpulan, hutan dan sumber semula jadi memainkan peranan yang penting dalam pelbagai aspek kehidupan masyarakat orang asli, terutamanya dalam aspek kelestarian kehidupan mereka.
The forest and nature plays a big role in the life of indigenous people, and their life is very much related to it.
Sumber semula jadi dikatakan kelanjutan apabila sumber tersebut bebas dari tekanan dan kejutan, dapat dikekalkan atau ditingkatkan dari segi kemampuan dan asetnya. Pembangunan lestari bermaksud pembangunan yang memenuhi keperluan masa kini tanpa menjejaskan kemampuan generasi masa depan untuk memenuhi keperluan mereka sendiri, terutama di kalangan kumpulan terdedah seperti orang asli ataupun orang asal.
Sustainability, last one. Sustainability development is a development which takes care all, including the need and the rights of the indigenous people.
Oleh itu, rungutan dan suara masyarakat ini perlu diambil kira kerana mereka yang merasakan kesannya adalah orang-orang yang sering terjejas teruk apabila berlaku bencana dan bencana alam kerana kerakusan kumpulan tertentu untuk mengeksploitasi alam sekitar atas nama pembangunan.
So the voice of the indigenous people need to be considered, or otherwise there will be a lot of natural disaster because this uncontrolled development.
Okay, saya rasa itu saja dari saya. Terima kasih.
Thanks from Samban.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much. And I think we get a very comprehensive picture of indigenous people in Malaysia context, no? And I just have my observation that there's so much legal framework as in Thailand we are facing. I think because we are sharing the same logging company during the colonial system. All right, thank you very much. And next, I think we will now hear about the situation in Cambodia. Okay, let's see how much legacy from French colonials and the historical context would frame the situation of indigenous people. Sochea, you ready? You will have your PowerPoint or not? Can you share? Yes, can you share your own? Thank you. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you. So you can see the slide, right?
Very clear. And
Okay.
yes.
Okay, Chum Rip Su and good afternoon, everyone. Again, it's my great honor to share this, but I hope this will enhance the understanding of the public as well as a policymaker to understand about our issues and also calling for, you know, discrimination, to stop discrimination for indigenous people. So my presentation here, I will share some experience from Cambodia in the context of forest conservation, but it's also really important to the land and territory and resource rights of indigenous people. So my presentation will cover in 4 contents. Item here is our view of indigenous people in the world. Perhaps that's just for the sharing some information about the indigenous people in the world, as well as indigenous people in Cambodia, and then I'll highlight on the issues that indigenous people in Cambodia facing related to the land rights, territory, and resources, and also my personal recommendation to the stakeholders in concern. It's not moving. Okay, so for sure, this is the all data that indigenous people in the whole world is around 370 million live in over 17 countries in the world, and Asia is account for 70% of these 370 million people. And there is no defined term for indigenous people, or even because there's some debate or controversial debate at the international whether who should fall in under indigenous or not indigenous. So that's why the international platform has decided not to define it, but they have also identified some common uniqueness of indigenous people. For example, they have distinction. Can you hear me clearly? Because I have some noise interrupt from outside. Sorry, it's in my home. It's there's a construction outside. I hope that's not gonna interrupt the voice. So let me continue. For we have first, indigenous people are distinct in terms of social, political, cultural system from the dominant system. For example, we as indigenous people in Cambodia, we has against for the majority system that put in our community. For example, education, when they teach only in national language, but they don't teach in indigenous language, for example. That also we seem to have like every indigenous people, they used to be there, they for generation or thousands of years, and the existence is there before the newcomer, like colonizer or the outsider coming in. And for example, in my part, before we never encounter like Khmer or Vietnamese, but now it's like they're coming in, and we experience that as a new change for us. So the term indigenous people, I think it's varies from country to country. For example, in Vietnam, they may not recognize as indigenous people. They call it ethnic minority. In Cambodia, the term used indigenous people is like indigenous minority as well. But the term we have in Thailand or may not be used that word as well. Even in Myanmar, the term is pretty new for them, but each of us has understand that we are the peoples from our own land, and we inhabit there for generations. And of course, we face the same situations. First is lack of participation at the national politics. That is one of the issues that they internationally identify that the reason why. Sorry. Sorry. And of course, we are severe in terms of poverty and vulnerable to economic and social developments. That's how we normally living in a remote area and lack access to public service, healthcare, and education. Of course, we are also experience a lot of human rights violations and non-recognition, for example, in Thailand or in Thailand or in other part like Myanmar as well. No, mate. No, cập jobประชุม online แต่ก็เอาความหมาย Excuse me. Someone who just called me. Yeah. So in Cambodia, you can see in the maps mainly indigenous people in the northeastern part of Cambodia, and my people is from this province Moderator, and if you go further to the south, it will be Vietnam, and then part of our people is from here. But we account for only 1.4% of the total populations that, and we has the group that in Cambodia that exists and now is around, some data so that 17 group, but also from the previous data is that it's 24 groups in the whole country. But we are in the whole country, we have more than about 503 communities, and but we are living in a vast majority of the land of the country. You can see in the map that even we are small in population, but we are very huge in owning our customary land, 10 years. So as I said, we living in our lands for generations, and for example, in my community, we experience the new coming from I mean like colonizers from France, and later on sometime Japanese, and later on American is coming in, but later on we've experienced like encounter with Khmer and as well as Vietnamese and others group. So, but before we never experienced that before 1800 something. We never experienced encounters, new people coming into our area. So I would say in relation to our livelihood, we rely heavily on natural resource, as well as forest is a man's income for us for living, and we harvest, we cultivate, and we also ritual some of the spirit in the forest, in the mountains, in the rivers, and in the you know, in surrounding us and environment, and as well as the sky or the land that we stepping on. That is our belief. our relationship with the nature. So because of this, under the Cambodian development scheme, that they see our land is rich in natural resource, so it is for them to take it. Like the government, when they produced the land laws in 2001, there was a lot of controversy in this because people still acknowledge that all of the land is belong to the people, but the state claiming the mountain, the river, the forest belong to the state land. So and this has been a controversial state that pushed the indigenous people in Cambodia to dispositions from their own lands. For example, in order to obtain land ownership, you have to do communal land registrations. So, but the communal land registration is very lengthy and it's very costly, and you cannot afford it actually unless you have some support from NGO or donor organizations, and it's take in some cases like almost 4 or 5 years to apply for the land title, and but instead the government has provide a speedy recognition to the private land registrations, and as well as the company like economic land concessions, mining, and logging company. So this is very strange for us. Like in the whole country now, we're facing these land problems. Yeah, even those if you look at the our constitutions as well as the land law, there's no authority outside of the community may acquire any right to remove walls in property belong to indigenous people. That is the provision in the law had said, but in the reality, our lands, our forest has been taken easily by the state, by the local authority in the name of developments. So even though the Cambodian government has voted for in favor for the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, but its practice in the national level has been it's not significant at all. For example, the communal land registration that I mentioned earlier, up to now is less than 30 community has registered as a communal land title among 500 community. So estimate if the process is go on, it will take hundreds of years to get the communal land title. But the problem is also happening with the government when they grant over land to the private company, to the mining company, to the hydro dams construction, to the forest logging company, and as well as sometimes they safeguard us in terms of forest conservation, meaning we can live there, but we cannot own the forest. We cannot manage the forest, or that's what we want. So this right has been violated, and it has been experienced in a number of community protected area. But at the same time, there's a lot of report saying that there's a lot of illegal logging in those areas from the outsider, and the community who fight for the protection of their land rights or forestry rights has been accused of any kind of crimes, and sometimes they face illegal actions at the court, and sometimes they get arrested due to their activity to protect their own land and natural resources. As I said, it's, for example, in the hydro.
2 more minutes. Can you wrap up?
Yep. For the hydro dams, one of our community has been forced out to the community without free and from consent, and they has been calling for the government to allow them to settle down in their own community for so that they can survive, because they cannot. And when the government has relocate them in outside, there's no proper support for their livelihood, and as well as revitalize their own cultural and social problems. So for mainly for the I will jump to the challenge that we face. You can see that everywhere in Cambodia now, even recently, the government has report that in 2018, the land forest has degraded from 70% in 1970, and up to now is like less than 40% of the forest coverage in the whole country. But there is some report that there may be less than that, and those who affect the most is the indigenous people, because as I said earlier, we rely heavily on the forest for our survival. So I will go to the recommendation. So basically our recommendation is that we want the government as well as all the stakeholders to promote and protect our rights to land and natural resource, as well as allow us to live and stay in our ancestral land, even those whatever you define it as a protected area or not. It is our right as indigenous people to live there, and every project, development project that given to the private company or the powerful and the rich, they has to obtain our free from consent. Otherwise, there will be a lot of problem with the community that stand up to the projects, again to the projects. And one more thing is that we will also call for the government to recognize and monitor some of the illegal logging or issues related to the illegal occupation of the lands that owned by the powerful and the rich. When the community try to defend their rights, they has been always accused of protecting their own land and their own forest, and sometimes they has been even somehow threatened for their security and get killed or sent to prisons. Yeah, so the last part, perhaps I think what we can see that as the major part is the government should review its policy and law that to comply with international standard, and also enforce the law for the protection of indigenous people rights. So that's all for me, and thank you.
Thank you very much, and that's a very comprehensive also presentation from Sochea. No? A lot of recommendation already, but maybe we will go back to you after the next presenter, the actual protections or mechanism that is applied in both countries like Thailand, Malaysia, and Cambodia. Next, we will hear from our academic friends who have been studying on anthropologies, and also he also interested on not only the situation of indigenous people in Thailand, but also in the regions. Do you have PowerPoint, Dr. Dumrongphol? Can you share on your screen? Thank you very much. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
โอเคครับครับสวัสดีครับผมขออนุญาตเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะครับถ้าเป็นภาษาไทยนะครับนะฮะเพื่อจะได้รักษาเวลานะครับก็ในหัวข้อที่ได้รับมอบหมายก็คือว่าในเรื่องผู้พิทักษ์ป่านะครับชุมชนชาติพันธุ์กะเหรี่ยงในประเทศ
So
ไทย
they have asked me to talk about the forest guardian current ethnic community in Thailand. This is a part of the research for the indigenous people that I have researched with the Princess Sirinthorn Anthropology's center in Thailand. So this is the core research project. So at first, I would like to give you some background about the current. Who are the current, and the current are the largest indigenous people in group of indigenous people in Thailand, especially in the western of Thailand.
มีความหมายนะครับในแง่ของความเป็นกลุ่มคนที่อยู่มาแต่ดั้งเดิมนะครับ
They are indigenous people and contribute to the largest ethnic group. So the current, they are indigenous group and they have been living over this area for a long time. And there are some commonalities of the current in this area. They speak Sino-Tibetan linguistic in the sub-branch of Sino-Tibetan branches, minor branches. And they have been studied by Western linguists, and also the sub-ethnic group have been divided into Skor, Po, Pao, and Kareni or Kayan. Thai people know of them as a long neck Karen, as Padong or the long neck Karen. But we are going to talk about the two main branches of the Karen, the Skor and Po Karen, which also contribute in the guardianship of the forest and the indigenous people, as well as their language. And their language also show the interaction with different ethnic groups. For example, the Mon people. Who are the Karen? The Karen has been known to the Westerners in terms of the ethnic groups in Myanmar, in the Kayah state, in the Kayin state, in other state. There are three groups: the Pao group, the Kayah and Kayin, and in Karen state. In Thailand, the western area have the largest population of the Karen population. I think this is the biggest, the largest group of indigenous people in Thailand are the Karen. And in terms of the area, their contribution and the number of people, I think the Karen also play important roles. And I think Thai people would think the Karen are from Myanmar, but historically, they are also kind of indigenous. And they are actually living on their own land, not from Myanmar. The original setting of Myanmar in the inner northern Asia. Usually some people say that they are from Tibet or even in the lake area of Europe or river of running sand. So the Karen legends refer to river of running sand, which are ancestors reputedly crossed for over 2,500 years. I think all this already 2,300 years ago, or in the Gobi desert. and then they migrate to the east of Tibet, and then in the Qin era of China, they have been invaded by Chinese. So these people, they start like migrate to the south, to the Yangtze rivers, to Salween rivers, and they have been living in the Irrawaddy river basin and delta. So in the mountain from the north, between the mountain bordering Thailand and Myanmar, you will see a large population of Karen people in that area. Now also, one of the assumption regarding the migration route of the Karen people have existed long time ago, and it also affected how they decided to resettle in this area even before the Thai earlier kingdom of Sukhothai. So the Karen people are considered the indigenous people who settle in the western border between Thailand and Myanmar from north to the south for a long time. They have lived in the as large communities in 15 provinces from the north of Thailand to the south, like from the top north of Thailand to Prachuap Khiri Khan or until or to Ranong. It is expected in 2016 that the number of like over 500,000 of Karen people. So Karen people contribute to representing almost 40% of 10 all ethnic group. During the survey, you know, like the Thai government tried to limit it, the number of ethnic group in Thailand to 10 ethnic group. They were divided into 1,927 house groups or household. In these 15 provinces covered from the north, the central regions, the western regions, and also the upper southern regions of Thailand. The group of Karen in Thailand are divided into two groups, the Po group and the Skor group. The Po group are the early settler, or Bowe is the last one based on their resettlement and their pattern of resettlement in Thailand. George said they have a hypothesis that Karen have been living in Thailand since Hari Punchai dynasty. And also they probably like live in Thailand, in the current Thailand, even before the Suvarnabhumi or the settlement of the first Thai kingdom. The Karen people who study their own ethnic, they are like there are two sides. The Po is considered the paternal or Pati clan, and the Po is the mother's clan or Muti, based on their story and their animism respect. Pagagayo, or usually like Skor in the Burmese area play the important roles. They have been mentioned in the fresco painting, in literatures, as well as the archive of Ratchaburi archive. For example, Ratchaburi Chronicle actually like talk about the King Rama the Pheap and the visit of the eastern region in Kanchanaburi, Ratchaburi, and Phetchaburi. There a special ethnic which is called as Karen by there are any kind of like group between in Kongkachornkiat area in Phetchaburi. They live in a separate and secluded mountainous area and only mingle with themselves. They don't want to have a kind of like permanent settlement, and they separate themselves from other ethnic groups or other people. They also relocate whenever there are disaster or epidemic. They don't go to towns and cities because they don't like the weathers, and of course they live in the forest and mountainous area. These are some of the research in Phetchaburi in Kongkachorn area, which is like the case of like land conflict between the Kongkachorn area and other people, and of course like and the state.
Hello. We back in. Hello. Hello อาจารย์คะ
Hello, are you still there? Yes, yes. Okay, you are back.
ขอ
The
ข
system
ออภัย
failed
ขออภัยครับนะฮะก็คือในความเป็นวิถีของชาวกะเหรี่ยงนะครับ ก็ถือได้ว่ามีลักษณะผ
So
สมผสาน
the current way of life and culture is the mix between Theravada Buddhist from the Mon and also the animism, which are some are like Christian, some are animism, and also practice the ancestral spirit. They always live in the forest from the start. Seen as the adoption of the cultural practice, the belief, and the community forest, which is the cultural and ethnic practice. So they want to preserve the maintenance of the current identity in the community. The rotational plantation is one of the current wisdom. The rotational agriculture or shifting farming is a wisdom used to maintain the rule, regulation, prohibition, and custom. The current communities connect between their belief and respect to nature. This is the revival of Kanchanaburi current cultural practices. These are the paying respect to the natures and the ritual, as well as the connection between the ritual and the respect that they have to the forest and natural resources. You can see the harmonies between the indigenous people who were born and live in this area, and they have been living in this area for over 100 years. The current culture also shows the connection between the natural resources, the forest, as well as the forest conservation. The rotational agriculture is one system of the agriculture that is oldest, and it had been practiced for 10,000 of years.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, are you still there?
อาจารย์คะอาจ ารย์ปิดกล้องของอาจารย์ก็ได้ค่ะทั้งปิดกล้อง
I
ดี
think
กว่า
you can turn off you can like start like by not turning on your camera. It might help. The current people practice mixed and rotational cultivation and focus on food securities and biodiversity of their food crops. Especially in the western forest ecosystem as well as the second tier forest, as well as the rotational cultivation, which is not separated from the other ecosystem. The the rotational cultivation is also embedded in the forest ecosystem themselves.
The internet has been maybe off from his side. Maybe we will ตอนหลังเนาะโอเค
โอเคครับก็นั้นผมสรุปขออนุญาต
So I think
สั้นๆนะครับคือว่า
we will ask อาจารย์ to okay he's back but
he's back.
Okay. Last slide. Yes, please continue your last.
Okay. ระบบไร่หมุนเวียนนะครับก็เป็นส่วนหนึ่งของระบบ
The rotational agriculture is one of the indigenous community resources management and the indigenous group that have the complex relationship in the eco-cultural system. The rotational cultivation should not be separated from the other resources management within the community, as well as the management, the customary traditional management, as well as the systematic land resource management based on the customary knowledge. And this system should be understood in the changing condition and concept. I understand that there are the committee who understand who study the current indigenous ecosystem and forest management, and if I have more time then I can elaborate on this issue. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we heard about the academic work which is supporting wrapping the studies. Actually it's also supporting the advocacy and also the struggle of indigenous people in the case of Thailand and in the case of Bang Kloi. I think we will allow questions and input from the friends from Zoom. If there anyone wanted to ask a question directly to the speakers, or anyone want to actually give an input, because we also did not have the scenario from other countries. Otherwise, there is already one question that I get is that for all of you working with the community and indigenous people yourself, when you're facing violations, what type of protection mechanism in your country that is work and that is not working? And then what will happen to you guys as human rights defenders and also indigenous in your country? Anyone want to answer first? Pachara, can you answer? What type of protection you have as a human rights defenders and also indigenous people in Thailand?
จริงผมทำอะไรไม่ได้เลยนอกจากแค่เวลาไป
ใช่นะคะคุณเชิญคุณพัชระเอา well as a human rights defender, I have nothing to do apart from like trying to make myself secure. They live in the national forest, and of course, this is just like one of the region or the space when you go to Kongkachornkiat National Forest, which used to have a lot of violence. The only thing that I can do is I cannot travel alone. That's is the only thing that I can do. And of course, there's a murder and assassination in that area. And we will see that checkpoint. We have to seek the permission to go to that area. And it takes like 3 hours without any internet or phone signal. So if you just disappear, you disappear. You will not be found. And that's just what we can do at that time is I just refrain from like not traveling alone, because in that area they will enforce their authority as quote unquote their kingdom. And I think like we should not have this kind of quote unquote kingdom for the security of all of the people. And there should not be the area of like the so-called like the state within state or reserve area, which in that area it should not be practiced.
It seems to be so what happened to indigenous people in Malaysia when they are facing violations? What type of protection mechanism that you can exercise? Samban, are you still there? Otherwise, okay.
I'm still here.
Okay.
So what kind of protection is very hard to say, because so far now that have happened in Malaysia, because these people I rather say that they're the one who fight for their rights, but at the end they're the one who get arrested. They're the one who get what we call that integrates by the authorities body. So yeah, I don't have answer for that. So I think sorry, I can hear you. I think in
Human Rights Commissions.
Yeah, we do have that. We have human rights commission. So they what I should call that, they help what they can help. So
okay. Okay, I think I understand you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So from Cambodia, what are the mechanisms protecting you as a youth of indigenous people and also working for indigenous people? Or if you don't have, what will happen?
Basically, I think the experience depends if it is involved with the accusation or legal action, that we have to seek for the lawyer, to support from the lawyer, or perhaps we can try to reach out the UN, perhaps, and then we can also looking for the NGO working on the human rights to provide the legal protections. But if it is related to the security, I mean like killing or that, we don't know. But most often I think people will try to stay far away from from those who want to kill them. But we don't know. But actually, for example, in our place, forest is one of the safeguard place that we can hide, or we can move around. And then but of course we have to make sure we can survive. But if you are in the village or in the city, you have to go with groups, so that people can at least know who do that to you, or but it's quite hard. But I think if you've experienced that kind of intimidation, you better be aware and then have to protect in advance, and it's yeah, and yeah, that's what I can share.
Are you safe, Sophia?
Yes,
Sophia?
I myself has experienced one, but it involved like some of phone message, and but I feel okay. I still, for example, I have to change my travel direction, like not to go like only one road again and again, something like that. But we experience in helping community when they supposed to get arrested, but we support them in to seek out the legal support from they send them out to other part of the country so that they can stay somewhere for a temporary period. Yeah.
How is the UN? I knew that the Cambodian has the UN office. Are they playing role or recognition of indigenous people in Cambodia? How is their view on indigenous people?
I think they do support, and but again, as I said, if because we are in the bright side, and if those who in the dark side, so we cannot know. So, but I think they do have some training or session sharing about how to protect those who human rights defender or environmentalist. Yeah.
Okay, and I think since we are very close, Thailand and Cambodia, we also heard the issue around the land grabbing, actually from the Thai company, and also related to the situation of the environment issues in Cambodia. And also we are at the UN, I think now we have the UN representatives of Cambodian situation. He's from Thailand. So please make sure that you get to know him, and then to get all information about indigenous people in Cambodia, that handed over to him. I think that would be a very good help for the conditions of indigenous people in Cambodia. Are there any questions from the floor, from the Zoom, that we have many activists in the Zoom? Otherwise, I will give the last 5 minutes or more each to the speaker so we can wrap up the session. We have maybe 20 minutes from the last sessions. Pachara, can you maybe start?
Yeah. ขออนุญาตแชร์สกรีนนะครับเห็นสไลด์ใช่ไหมครับ
เชิญค่ะเชิญค่ะ
โอเคครับก็จริงๆแล้วก่อนที่ผมจะไปถึงตัว
I hope that you can see the slide before the recommendation. Actually, there are kind of like a very 4 or 5 cynical issue that I have experienced. Several weeks ago, I have a friend from like the UK, and he or she visited, say like they visited Intanon area, and he said like going to the protected forest in Thailand, they have to pay the foreigners price, that means like 200 baht. But the forest area should be, they said according to them, they say like it should be accessible to everyone, because it should be kind of like the national heritage and accessible to everyone. Second, in Thailand, many people said that Thailand have never been the what say like the national, what we call like the national forest. The national forest is it's not working for kind of like the people in arbitrary enforcement of the National Forest Act in the area by the organization that have like arbitrary power and in the area to manage the people and the situation in the forest. It's actually like very cynical. And before the recent amendment of the National Forest Bill have been approved by the National Legislative Assembly, which is like actually like under the coup maker's government. We try to protest and we try to kind of like bring the ethnic current to the area, and then the National Forest Department has said that this area is the water resources for the people in that space. You should not be able to work there, and of course it is the protected forest. This is the water resources, and it is the national forest that produce rivers and water for everybody in the society. However, some of the A1 tier area have been used for like mining, concession, and potentially there are like the Yom River diversion, which will affect 6 reserve forests and 1 national forest. I think this is very cynical, and I think that according to the Silpa Acha, the Minister of the for the Forest and Environmental Protection Minister, just a day and after Kongkachornkiat Forest Complex have been certified World Heritage, he said in Thailand we don't have the term indigenous people, despite there are indigenous people whose rights have been violated. So this leads to my recommendation. In order to address this problem, we need to kind of like address the Yellowstone idea of like colonial forestation by having their own quote unquote kingdom, have their own law, and any law that can like sabotage people's human rights. The people, indigenous people living in that area do not have the land right. They don't have any right, and they also have like suffer from human rights violation. Second, I think we need to kind of like rebrand the new image of the land and resource management. We should not be like the national forest, but that does not belong to the people, that not belong to all Thai. What about the rebranding to like community forest, indigenous domain, indigenous forest, which they can manage using their cultural capital? And if people in the urban would like to have the forest, we should be able to do so. We should not centralize the power under the Royal Forestry Department. Thirdly, rebuild the value of food culture and secure the eco-service. For example, vocational farming, the existence of the indigenous people in the area or the indigenous people in that area can also provide eco-service to the countries. And finally, we need to recreate the specific law to protect human rights of indigenous group. Why the ethnic group need that? What are the protective law? Why do they need kind of like why do they need special law to protect them, whereas the Thai people do not enjoy such protection, but they are treated as ethnic group are treated as second-class citizens. They are not viewed as equal to the other people in the society in Thailand. So this is a positive discrimination, so that they can have an equal footing and equal position as the other citizens in Thailand in terms of human rights, human dignities, and the equal right and equal treatment under the law. Finally, most importantly for the Bang Kloi area, as well as the forest national forest management, the armed forest management, backed up by the security forces. This is not the most sustainable way to protect the forest, as well as the protecting human rights of the indigenous people. I think we need to eliminate dictatorship from the political system so that the forestry area will not be used or harvested politically from the dictatorship.
And I think some of the recommendation has been also developing in different platform. But however, the last slide have told us that since we have a strong authoritarian regimes or dictatorship, so things are not moving very, very smoothly and very well at the moment. Samban, can you have 5 minutes recommendations?
Okay.
Who do you want to talk to first? Who the audience for this recommendation? And then
Okay.
we will help to follow that up.
Okay. The audience is of course the authority bodies. So as addressing the rights of indigenous people in Malaysia, we have some main concern, which is one of it is obnoxious by the government bodies of the human right based on approach to development with application of free, prior, and informed consent. So this thing is very, very important for us indigenous people in Malaysia. It's because the land is belong to us, and everything we depend on the forest. So if our territories have been grabbed, then it's very hard to us to to continue our continue our living. So in any companies or any government bodies, anything that regarding the indigenous people, please FPIC must be transparent and take into accountability. So I think as the one who work in this, I can say, like I would like to quote my manager words, which is, this industry is a industry of hope, which is we hoping that in future this our indigenous people will be recognized, our indigenous people will be fully protected. Then now what we're doing now is a step to that accomplishment. So for those who here, don't stop, don't losing hope. So hopefully the authorities bodies in any country listen to our voice and do what they should do. So I think that's all from me.
Thank you for hope-based message from you, that we still have hope, and also we continue our struggles in the promotion of indigenous people in the world and also in our own context. And Thailand and Malaysia is very close. We also have Orang Asli in the southern part of Thailand, and also I found that your presentation is very helpful for us, for the Thai NGO, to understand more about Orang Asli. So maybe you can share with us. And also in the southern part of Thailand, there also a proposal to declare one of the forest regions called Barahara into UNESCO recognition. So maybe we can share that information, and thing can be also actually coming from the people, not from the state directive order. Okay, I would leave Sochea as a youth in the last speech for us today. Okay, so Ajahn Dumrongphol, can you have a recommendation for the floor? how academian is he still with us?
Okay ครับ Okay
โอเคเชิญค่ะ
ครับ okay for the previous question I would like to share some opinion in short and then I will conclude about my opinion in the last. The first is I think is in especially in case of Thailand among the indigenous people, even the government is not accept the people or ethnic group as indigenous of this mainland, but from the wrong history, they have the violence, like the structural violence from the discord relation between the general Thai people and the ethnic groups. The general Thai thought that the ethnic group belonging to the others. The discourse of the otherness is like that. We have the many phenomena in the world about the xenophobia or like that. Then this is structural violence from the long term. For in indigenous rights, I think is that we have the government also now accept about the ethnic group as indigenous or have daily life or daily livelihoods. But for by the administrative management from the government is have problem about the mindset of them because as for example for the Karen community in the western part of Thailand, they can like the forest guardian to preserve the and conserve the forest, and also they have the good management rotation agriculture system and others. But the government sector didn't accept for this. That is a problem because they want to like make the policy making or others by themselves only. That's a problem from the government side because the big area like the forest as the country capital, but actually the forest is not like the forest inventory or forest plantation. They have to cannot be the utilitarian discord like that. Then the nature resort should belonging to the people, not without the people or without the human. That is the main of the discord relation between the government and the indigenous. For the indigenous, I think is a as I present as the forest guardian, not only in the Karen ethnic community, others in Chanthaburi have the Chong ethnic groups, in the southern have the Orang Asari or Mani ethnic group, in the northern so many groups that they can have the good management and crop or the rotational farming for the maintain. And also we can talk about the now have the constitution article 70 for the we call for the support and encourage the ethnic daily life as the effect from the development, like in Thai we call พรบส่งเสริมวิถีชีวิตกลุ่มชาติพันธุ์กลุ่มเปราะบางที่ได้รับผลกระทบจากการพัฒนา like that. As the first pioneer is a Karen ethnic group and the second is a Gypsy in the southern part of Thailand. Then is for the Samacha Chatipan or the ethnic congress now is established and can can share and can propose their demand to the government, and also to campaign for the public to make the discord changing from the last from the past to be the accept the forest or natural resource should not belonging to the government, should belonging to the public, to belong to the people, especially the people living in the forest area or like the forest guardian as I presented. And also forest making not like only the government, and not the forest should not be only for the utilitarian aesthetic ideology, should be like the ecological service or others for the can make the to maintain and also can manage goods management, because we have so many academic paper about this about the ecological service, and but the private the government sector didn't accept about it. They think it's the ethnic group or the indigenous is a forest destroyer only. That is why we have to maintain and we have to contribute about the knowledge about this one. Okay, and for this, I think it should be like that, support the indigenous and make contribution to the public to accept we have the indigenous, even that is not like the maybe it's not right that we campaign as the human right, but we have to know is the boundary and the nation state is coming in the modern society, not from the past, but in the past we living together, and also we integrate to the natural resource together like that. Agro-ecological system, Lisbon should be concerned about managing system for the forest and for the indigenous together with the other people, not only in Thailand, also in the mainland of Southeast Asia and in other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. Thank you for those recommendations with very practical and also promoting the role of academia and also to support indigenous people movement. Sochea, your last speech, it's the hope of all of us as a youth from IP. Can you do that? Recommendation, what the youth of the IP in your country and also in Asia is needed. So you can tell us, and then we can spread that to the rest of the audience that now listening to us.
Thank you. Before I do that, I could call back that youth is the most powerful actor in our society. So our contribution is very important and very crucial for the positive change. I think, but from there we have to start engaging and mobilizing the youth, and also empowering them to understand the causes, and as well as their contribution for the joint action to protect the natural resource and as well as the lands. For Cambodia, I would just want to emphasize that actually you have to understand that we are the first comer in the lands. That means we know how to take care of the lands, and the newcomer always look at the land or the forest as the commodities. That means they don't value the lands as part of our life, as part of our spirit. So meaning if you don't respect indigenous rights, or you don't promote indigenous rights to land and natural resource, it means you will destroy your own future. For example, in Cambodia, most of the forests and river, as well as the water source, is from our side. So meaning if you destroy the land that we inhabit, you will be destroy your own future. And we see that happening a lot, like a lot of in terms of climate change. You have more flood, you have lengthy drought, and you have unpredicted climate like before. And that is the meaning. If you destroy the indigenous land, it means you destroy your own life in the future. Maybe not you, but also your next generations. So that means we also, for the state, nation state, to recognize the indigenous contribution to, lands and natural resource protections, because that's how we can protect the resource. And also, last one is to call for speeding up the recognition of the communal land title, as well as the customary land tenures. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think we are now toward the end of this session and very interesting presenters and also recommendation. I think we found something in common. For example, the lacking of all inclusiveness, and indigenous people are calling for a very basic standard. Tell us what you are doing, for example, or the development and also the management of the land and forestry. And the legal framework, it seems to be common issues within Southeast Asia, in particular Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia. The recognition of communal lands is also not as yet in our legal framework, even at the constitutions. And the protection of human rights defender like us, like all of us, including indigenous people. Thank you very much, everyone. And I think I hand it over to the organizer. And thank you for audience and also the work of every one of us that has been doing for indigenous people and also for your community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kun Pornpen, for moderating this session. And thank you to all panelists for sharing great experience and the movement that do. As a young indigenous people, as a youth, you have a career and for your communities. And also, I hope that all the audience will learn a lot from these sessions, from the practical experience and also from the academic sharing too. And last, we also great to hear all the strong, concise, and meaningful recommendations from all the panelists too. So for now, we may have take a short break and we'll come back at 3 p.m. Bangkok, Thailand time. And so enjoy your break.